Welcome to the sinister side, where dark stories and hidden truths come to light. Before we begin, tell us in the comments which country you're watching from and what time of day it is for you. Now, let's uncover the sinister side. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a chilling story. In the sweltering summer of 1852, the town of Mobile, Alabama, buzzed with a peculiar mix of anticipation and unease. The Mississippi River carried its familiar scent of damp earth and river mud, but beneath the humid air hung a weightier curiosity. A young woman, whose very presence seemed to bend reality, was being brought to the city for auction. Her name was whispered in hushed tones across the plantations, inns and markets, Selina Hawthorne, but few had actually seen her. What made her remarkable was not merely her beauty, though many claimed she possessed a radiance that rivaled the richest Creole heiresses, but the rumor of her mysterious past, which shrouded her in a fog of speculation and envy. Selina's journey to Alabama had been as enigmatic as her existence. Originally from Charleston, South Carolina, she had passed through the hands of various owners, yet her value had never diminished. In fact, it grew with each sale. Unlike other enslaved individuals who were often valued solely for their labor, Selina seemed to carry a magnetism that drew attention and money. Plantation owners would whisper to one another, "She's worth more than land and livestock combined," a statement that, in the economics of the South, was no trivial boast. But what no one knew, and perhaps no one could imagine, was the secret she carried, a secret that could upend the rigid hierarchies of society if it were ever revealed. Her appearance at the auction grounds in Mobile was nothing short of theatrical. News of her arrival had spread like wildfire. A crowd had gathered, planters in starched collars, curious townsfolk, and even a handful of outsiders who had come merely to witness the spectacle. The auction block, typically a platform for displaying ordinary human chattel, seemed to pale in comparison to her aura. Selina stood at the center, poised with a calm that suggested an inner world far removed from the terror that usually accompanied the sale of human lives. Her skin bore the smooth bronze glow of youth, and her eyes, dark and enigmatic, scanned the crowd with a knowing that unsettled even the most confident buyers. The auctioneer, a man with a booming voice and a reputation for dramatic flair, began the proceedings with his customary gusto. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, "here is a woman of unparalleled worth. Her beauty, her wit, her skill in household management, and her charm make her a treasure beyond measure." The crowd murmured and leaned in. Offers began to climb rapidly, each bid a demonstration of both greed and admiration. It was as if Selina's very existence challenged the men who would claim ownership over her. They were captivated, yet anxious, aware that they were bidding not merely on labor but on something almost ineffable. Amid the growing frenzy, a few astute observers noticed the subtle ways Selina exerted influence. She spoke softly to the auctioneer, offering a smile here, a tilt of her head there, guiding the rhythm of the bidding without uttering a single command. Her mastery of presence was uncanny. Historians would later speculate that she had learned this art from her earliest years, perhaps even from her mother, who had been rumored to possess an almost mystical ability to manipulate attention and favor. Selina was not simply a commodity, she was an enigma wrapped in the guise of a woman forced into bondage. As the bidding soared, a hush fell over the crowd. One wealthy planter, a man named Jonathan Whitmore, known for his dominance in cotton and sugar trades, had become the front-runner. His face, usually so composed, betrayed a flicker of awe, a mixture of desire and caution. Something about Selina unsettled him, perhaps the quiet certainty in her gaze, or the way she seemed to read the room as if she were the one holding power. When the gavel finally fell, it confirmed what everyone already suspected. Selina had become the most expensive slave ever auctioned in Alabama. The sum paid for her exceed the combined value of several large plantations and their laborers. It was a transaction that would echo across the South for decades, whispered as a tale of both greed and fascination. Yet the truth of Selina's value lay not in the gold exchanged for her, but in the secret she guarded with every gesture, every measured word. This secret, unknown to any of the men who had sought to claim her, was the source of her extraordinary influence. Some suspected it was her intelligence, sharper than any tutor could have trained, or her uncanny ability to anticipate human desire. Others whispered darker, more fantastical theories, that she possessed knowledge of hidden treasures, secret alliances, or even powers beyond the ordinary. Selina never confirmed or denied these tales, and therein lay her power. The very impossibility of her story made her irresistible. Selina's first night in Mobile, under the ownership of Whitmore, was spent in the grand estate overlooking the bay. She was given quarters that, though more luxurious than those of most enslaved people, were still confined. Yet, as she sat by the window and watched the moonlight ripple across the water, she plotted her path. She had learned long ago that survival demanded strategy, patience, and cunning. Each word she spoke, each smile she offered, was carefully measured to ensure she could navigate a world designed to suppress her. The truth of her secret was locked away within her, a key that could unlock fortunes, destroy reputations, or perhaps even rewrite her destiny. The days that followed were marked by a subtle dance of power. Whitmore, enamored by her beauty and intelligence, frequently sought her counsel on matters that extended far beyond household chores. Selina, with meticulous care, provided just enough guidance to maintain his admiration without revealing her full capabilities. Observers would later note that the Whitmore household flourished in ways that seemed almost magical. Crops improved, laborers worked with unusual efficiency, and disputes among servants were resolved swiftly, often without anyone noticing her hand in it. Selina's influence was omnipresent yet invisible, a testament to her mastery of manipulation and discretion. Meanwhile, rumors of her secret spread quietly through the town, though none could ascertain its nature. Servants whispered in kitchens, young women speculated at market stalls, and even rival planters pondered the mystery behind her remarkable value. Some theorized she was a daughter of a noble family, stolen and sold into bondage. Others suspected she had inherited a treasure map or a cache of knowledge that could topple empires. All these stories were, in a sense, true. They hinted at the untold power Selina wielded, though none grasped the full extent. By the end of her first month in Mobile, Selina had secured her place not only in the Whitmore household, but in the annals of Southern legend. She had become the focus of fascination, desire, and speculation, a figure who transcended the ordinary conditions of slavery through her intelligence, charm, and unspoken secret. And though the world saw only a young woman who had been bought and sold, the reality was far more extraordinary. Selina Hawthorne possessed a truth so remarkable, so impossible, that it would take years, and perhaps even generations, to understand its full significance. Her story had only begun. The auction block had secured her a price beyond imagination, but it had not measured the depth of her cunning, the resilience of her spirit, or the shadowy secret that lay at the heart of her being. That secret, known only to Selina, would shape destinies, influence fortunes, and challenge the rigid social order of Alabama in ways no one could foresee. And it all began on that sweltering summer day when the most expensive slave woman ever auctioned in Alabama stepped into the glare of public attention, carrying a mystery that no one would ever truly unravel, at least, not while she lived. The Whitmore estate, though stately and imposing from the outside, was a house of quiet tension beneath its polished surfaces. Selina had settled into her new quarters, her movements graceful yet deliberate, each step calculated to observe, learn, and influence. The household staff, a mix of enslaved men and women, were at once intimidated and intrigued by her. Selina understood the value of perception. People trusted what they could not fully comprehend, and she had cultivated an aura of mystique so complete that even the most seasoned servants hesitated to question her. Within days, Selina began her silent conquest of the household. She learned who wielded real influence among the staff, the cook whose temper could decide the day's atmosphere, the butler whose knowledge of the estate's secrets exceeded his official duties, the wet nurse whose eyes missed nothing. Selina took meticulous note of their strengths and weaknesses, storing each piece of information like precious coins. With subtle gestures and carefully placed words, she began to weave herself into the fabric of their daily lives. Her presence commanded attention without seeming to, a delicate balance of authority and discretion that left everyone both comforted and unsettled. Yet her greatest challenge was Jonathan Whitmore himself. The planter was a man accustomed to controlling every aspect of his empire, his lands, his laborers, and even the social gatherings of Mobile. He had purchased Selina for an astronomical sum, yet even he soon realized that ownership did not equal mastery. She moved through the house as though she were a part of it, and yet apart from it, untouched by his commands. It was a paradox he could not reconcile. Her intelligence was evident, but it was her subtlety, her ability to anticipate needs and manipulate circumstances without appearing to, that unnerved him most. Selina's daily routine became a study in influence. She learned the schedules of each household member, noting when tensions were likely to flare or when decisions were made impulsively. She observed Whitmore's moods, recognizing the signs that preceded frustration, pride, or vulnerability. In private moments, she whispered advice on trivial matters, how to arrange the table for optimal effect, which seeds to plant in the gardens for maximum yield, but her suggestions often extended far beyond their apparent simplicity. A shift in the placement of furniture could alter the household's energy. A well-timed compliment could soothe tempers and prevent conflict. Whitmore, unaware of the depth of her understanding, began to rely on her counsel more than he admitted to anyone. Among the staff, rumors began to circulate, as subtle as the breeze that moved through the estate's sprawling gardens. Some claimed that Selina had a sixth sense, an almost preternatural awareness of events before they occurred. Others suggested she was privy to secrets the Whitmore family had long buried, perhaps even those relating to illicit deals or hidden wealth. Her beauty was only part of her allure. Her mind, sharp as a blade and sharper still in its ability to manipulate perception, drew people to her whether they wanted to be drawn or not. The local townsfolk, too, could not ignore her. Mobile was a place that thrived on gossip and speculation, and the arrival of the most expensive slave ever auctioned in Alabama was more than enough to ignite curiosity. Merchants, planters, and wandering travelers would ask about her in whispers, each repeating what they had heard, embellishing with their imagination. She knows things, some would say, things she should not know. Others were bolder, claiming that she could influence men with a mere glance, bending them to her will without so much as a word. Selina never confirmed or denied these stories. She merely let them grow, knowing that a legend was far more valuable than truth. Selina's secret, however, was far more extraordinary than the rumors suggested. It was not merely intelligence or charm that made her exceptional. Deep within her mind, she possessed knowledge of a rare and ancient art, one that combined observation, psychology, and an almost mystical intuition about human behavior. From childhood, she had been trained in subtle manipulation, learning to anticipate desires, fears, and weaknesses before they were even fully formed. She could read a person's intentions in a glance, predict reactions to specific words, and even steer events toward outcomes favorable to her without anyone noticing. It was this skill that had made her so valuable, a commodity beyond the reckoning of even the wealthiest planters. The first real test of her power came sooner than expected. One evening, a quarrel erupted among the household staff. The cook, a woman of formidable presence named Agnes, accused a young housemaid of theft. Voices rose, tempers flared, and the potential for violence hung in the air. Whitmore, summoned to intervene, arrived to find chaos. Selina, observing from the doorway, stepped forward with a calm authority that silenced the room. She spoke softly, her voice weaving through the tension like a gentle wind through the trees. She asked questions, subtly guiding the accuser and accused toward honesty, revealing details that neither had disclosed willingly. Within minutes, the dispute was resolved. No one could explain exactly how she had accomplished it, but the outcome was undeniable. Whitmore, though proud, could not hide the flicker of awe in his eyes. Selina's influence began to extend beyond the household. News of her abilities reached the neighboring plantations, carried on whispers and rumors. Some planters sought to purchase her, or at least observe her, curious about the secret behind her extraordinary value. Invitations arrived for Whitmore to host gatherings where Selina could be present, subtly displaying her charm and intellect to an audience of influential men and women. Each appearance increased her mystique, and by extension, the prestige of the Whitmore estate. Yet Selina remained cautious, careful not to reveal more than necessary, knowing that the wrong exposure could turn fascination into fear and fear into danger. Despite her growing reputation, Selina maintained a careful balance between visibility and discretion. She cultivated relationships with key individuals within the household, forming alliances that would serve her in subtle ways. She observed the patterns of communication, noting who could be persuaded and who required careful handling. Every conversation, every interaction became an opportunity to strengthen her position and protect the secret she held. For Selina knew that knowledge was power, and power, in her situation, was a rare commodity indeed. As weeks turned into months, her control over the household and her surroundings became increasingly apparent. Whitmore, while never fully aware of the depth of her influence, relied on her judgment in matters that extended far beyond domestic affairs. Decisions about crops, finances, and labor were often guided by her subtle suggestions, and the estate prospered as a result. Among the staff, respect and perhaps a touch of awe solidified Selina's place at the heart of the household's intricate social web. Yet through it all, she never allowed familiarity to erode the mystery she projected. Selina's secret, the kernel of her extraordinary power, remained hidden even from those closest to her. She had learned early that a secret is most potent when it is protected by perception and ambiguity. People believed what they wished, and she allowed them to believe enough to be captivated, but never enough to uncover the truth. Her secret was a combination of skill, observation, and a rare understanding of human nature, a mastery that transformed her from a commodity into a legend. By the end of her first year at the Whitmore estate, Selina Hawthorne had become more the most expensive slave ever auctioned in Alabama. She had become a force that shaped the lives of everyone around her, seen and unseen. Her presence influenced decisions, dictated the flow of gossip, and subtly guided the fortunes of those who sought to control her. Yet behind the beauty, the intelligence, and the subtle mastery of influence, Selina carried her ultimate secret, a truth that could disrupt society's rigid hierarchies if ever revealed. It was a secret that promised both danger and liberation, a secret that would demand every ounce of cunning she possessed. And as the sun set over the Whitmore estate, casting long shadows across the manicured gardens and stately columns, Selina sat quietly in her room, plotting the next stage of her journey. Her eyes, dark and unreadable, reflected not only the fading light, but also the deep, unspoken knowledge that she alone held the key to her destiny, and to the impossible secret that had made her worth more than any man could comprehend. The world around her saw only a young woman bought and sold, a remarkable yet powerless figure in a society built on control and subjugation. But Selina Hawthorne's reality was far more intricate, far more dangerous, and far more extraordinary. She was not merely a woman enslaved, she was a strategist, a manipulator, and the keeper of a secret that would challenge the very foundations of the world she inhabited. And though no one yet understood the full extent of her power, it was only a matter of time before whispers became knowledge, and knowledge became a force that could no longer be contained. The first stage of her legend was complete, but the deeper mysteries, the hidden alliances, the dangerous temptations, and the impossible secret that had made her so coveted were only beginning to unfold. Selina had survived the auction, asserted her influence over the Whitmore estate, and captured the attention of all who encountered her. Now, the true test awaited, navigating the treacherous currents of power, desire, and secrecy in a world determined to own her, all while keeping the heart of her secret locked away where no one could touch it. As the months turned into a full year, the legend of Selina Hawthorne began to ripple far beyond the walls of the Whitmore estate. Her presence had become the talk of Mobile, whispered in the town's markets, discussed at church gatherings, and speculated upon in the parlors of neighboring plantations. Yet as fascination grew, so did envy, and the admiration she inspired was mirrored by the simmering resentment of those who felt threatened by her influence. In the rigid hierarchy of antebellum Alabama, a woman, especially an enslaved woman, who wielded power through intellect and subtlety was a dangerous anomaly. One such figure was Margaret Ellsworth, the wife of a neighboring planter who prided herself on controlling every aspect of her household. Margaret had long considered herself the arbiter of elegance, wit, and influence in mobile society. When news of Selina's extraordinary abilities reached her, a mixture of curiosity and indignation stirred within her. She could not reconcile the idea that an enslaved woman, purchased as property, could command such authority and shape events in ways she herself could not. Margaret resolved to investigate, to expose what she imagined to be a clever but ultimately fragile facade. Margaret's first approach was subtle. She arranged a social visit under the guise of friendship, bringing with her a retinue of companions from the neighboring plantations. The gathering was lavish, a display of wealth and refinement intended to impress both Whitmore and his mysterious household asset. Selina, ever observant, noted every detail, the way Margaret's companions whispered among themselves, the fleeting glances of jealousy directed at her, and the carefully orchestrated compliments that attempted to mask suspicion. Selina responded with measured grace, engaging politely but while observing the undercurrents of tension. She understood that confrontation was rarely overt. Power often revealed itself through the unseen motions of envy and insecurity. During the visit, Selina subtly demonstrated her influence without appearing to. She anticipated Margaret's requests before they were voiced, offering assistance in arranging the table, selecting wines, and even suggesting topics of conversation that would flatter the hostess. Margaret, watching these actions, felt a pang of unease. Selina's presence seemed to dominate the room without effort, shaping the mood and guiding events like a conductor directing an orchestra. The social visit ended with polite smiles and shallow pleasantries, but Margaret's mind raced with determination. She would not allow this enslaved woman to outshine her, and she began plotting more direct methods of uncovering Selina's secret. At the same time, Selina's own position within the Whitmore household was becoming more complex. While Whitmore admired her intellect and discretion, he also began to notice subtle tensions among his staff, some of whom were jealous or fearful of the attention she received. Selina, anticipating such challenges, began to fortify her alliances, identifying key individuals whose loyalty could be secured through careful favors, quiet encouragement, and the occasional well-timed act of protection. She understood that influence was a fragile construct, and that the smallest misstep could unravel her carefully maintained position. Meanwhile, whispers of Selina's abilities reached beyond Mobile. Planters from across Alabama began to inquire about her, sending emissaries to observe the woman whose reputation had become almost mythical. Some were motivated by genuine curiosity, others were driven by greed, hoping to acquire her for their own estates, or to discover the secret that had made her so valuable. Letters arrived at the Whitmore estate, some politely requesting visits, others brimming with veiled threats and insinuations. Selina, always cautious, read these communications with a keen eye, discerning motives and character in ways that left Whitmore both impressed and unnerved. Among the most dangerous of these outsiders was a man named Samuel Carver, a wealthy planter from northern Alabama. Carver had heard of Selina's reputation and believed that her secret could unlock unimaginable advantages, whether in business, social influence, or even personal gain. He arrived unannounced one evening, claiming to seek Whitmore's counsel, but his eyes betrayed a calculated intent. Selina recognized the threat immediately. Carver's confidence was rooted in entitlement and cunning, qualities that could make him formidable if he discovered the truth behind her influence. She greeted him with polite deference, masking her evaluation of his character, while subtly steering the conversation away from sensitive topics. Carver, intrigued and frustrated by her evasions, left with only the impression of a woman who was both extraordinary and impenetrable. Selina's mastery extended beyond social maneuvering. She was equally adept at psychological strategy. She had learned from her early years that survival in a world defined by brutality required understanding the fears and desires of others. She could read the smallest gestures, the faintest hesitation, the slightest change in tone, and use them to guide outcomes. When Carver's emissaries visited the estate, she subtly influenced their observations, ensuring they saw only what she allowed. By controlling perception, she maintained her aura of mystery and preserved the secret that underpinned her value. Despite her careful planning, not all threats were external. Within the Whitmore estate, tensions occasionally surfaced among staff who resented her influence. Some plotted to undermine her, spreading rumors of favoritism or questioning her authority. Selina addressed these challenges with precision. She intervened with subtle acts of mediation, revealing truth where necessary and demonstrating fairness that earned grudging respect. Her interventions were invisible to Whitmore, who remained unaware of the complex negotiations she conducted behind the scenes. By managing both external and internal pressures, Selina ensured her position remained secure while continuing to expand her influence. It was during this period that Selina began to reveal glimpses of her extraordinary abilities to those she could trust, though always in a controlled manner. She demonstrated insight into problems that seemed impossible to solve, offered guidance on decisions with far-reaching consequences, and subtly altered outcomes in ways that appeared accidental. Those who witnessed these moments began to speak of her in hushed reverence, describing her as almost prophetic or possessed of uncanny wisdom. Selina, however, never allowed anyone to approach the heart of her secret. It remained a tightly held knowledge, protected by her intelligence, observation, and subtle manipulation. The more she revealed, the more the legends around her grew. Visitors, curious planters, and townsfolk alike began to speculate wildly about her origins. Some claimed she was the daughter of a wealthy family, sold into slavery to protect her inheritance. Others whispered of exotic bloodlines or secret educations that had given her powers beyond ordinary understanding. Selina allowed these stories to circulate, knowing that the power of a legend often exceeded the value of reality. Her secret, impossible as it seemed, gave her the leverage to survive and thrive in a world determined to control her. As the year progressed, the tension between fascination and envy reached a boiling point. Margaret Ellsworth, determined to uncover the truth, orchestrated a plan to test Selina's abilities directly. She invited Whitmore to a gathering at her estate, under the pretense of discussing social alliances, while secretly observing Selina's interactions. The event was a delicate dance of politeness and subtle challenge. Selina, perceiving the underlying motives immediately, navigated the gathering with skill. She anticipated questions, guided conversations, and subtly influenced outcomes, leaving Margaret frustrated and bewildered. By the end of the evening, it was clear that Selina had not only survived the scrutiny, but had reinforced her legend, leaving her rivals unable to penetrate the enigma she carefully maintained. Yet, even as her influence solidified, Selina knew the world was full of threats. Ambition, greed, and fear were forces that could converge unexpectedly, and one misstep could unravel everything she had built. She began to plan for contingencies, developing strategies to protect herself and the secret that defined her. She understood that her survival depended not only on intelligence and charm, but also on foresight, patience, and the ability to manipulate events from the shadows. Each decision, each interaction, became a carefully orchestrated move in a complex game of power and perception. Selina's secret, the source of her extraordinary value, remained tantalizingly out of reach for all but herself. She had built a web of influence that extended through the Whitmore household, across mobile society, and into the surrounding plantations, yet she remained untouchable. Her reputation had become a force in its own right, a blend of beauty, intellect, and mystery that commanded respect and fear. And though no one could fully comprehend the depths of her knowledge, her actions hinted at possibilities far beyond ordinary human capability. By the end of Part 3, Selina Hawthorne had transformed from the most expensive slave ever auctioned in Alabama into a figure whose influence defied conventional understanding. She had navigated envy, curiosity, and subtle threats with precision, using her extraordinary intellect and strategic mastery to secure her position. Her legend grew high. Each day, a blend of reality and speculation, while the impossible secret she guarded remained hidden at the heart of her being. Selina's journey was no longer merely about survival. It was about shaping a world that sought to contain her, manipulating perception, and preparing for the inevitable challenges that would test her cunning, resilience, and mastery of the human heart. The shadows of rivalry and hidden threats were ever present, but Selina moved through them with a grace and calculation that left all who encountered her mesmerized. She was not merely a young woman in bondage, she was a strategist, a legend, and the keeper of a secret so extraordinary that it would shape the destinies of all who crossed her path. And as the nights grew longer, and whispers of her abilities spread even further, Selina Hawthorne understood that the next phase of her journey would demand every ounce of her skill, every measure of her patience, and the careful protection of the impossible secret that had made her both priceless and untouchable. By the second year of Selina Hawthorne's residence at the Whitmore estate, her presence had become a force that subtly shaped the social and economic landscape of Mobile. What had begun as curiosity and awe had evolved into cautious reverence among those who came into contact with her. Her influence stretched far beyond the household walls, reaching into the sphere of neighboring plantations, local merchants, and even the town's political elite. Yet the key to her power remained her carefully guarded secret, a combination of extraordinary intellect, observation, and near-mystical intuition about human nature. Selina's days were consumed by a delicate balance of tasks designed to solidify her position. She managed household affairs with meticulous attention, ensuring that servants felt guided but not coerced, respected but not emboldened to question her authority. Each interaction was a strategic move in a vast game of influence. Even Whitmore, the man who owned her in legal terms, often found himself subtly guided by her suggestions in matters he had thought exclusively his own. The decisions he made on crops, finances, and the management of labor reflected her counsel more than his personal judgment. Yet he remained unaware of the deliberate orchestration behind each outcome, interpreting successes as luck or intuition rather than the calculated maneuvers of the woman he had purchased. Selina's influence extended to the social scene of Mobile, where the town's elite were both fascinated and unsettled by her presence. Invitations arrived frequently, requesting her appearance at gatherings, parties, and even strategic meetings disguised as social events. Selina attended selectively, recognizing the importance of visibility without overexposure. At these events, she deployed her extraordinary understanding of human behavior with precision. She guided conversations, subtly steering alliances, smoothing tensions, and planting ideas that would later bear fruit in the form of loyalty, admiration, or advantageous partnerships. One notable example involved a dispute between two prominent merchants whose rivalry threatened to disrupt local trade. Selina, aware of the delicate balance at stake, engineered an encounter under the guise of casual conversation at a Whitmore-hosted gathering. She directed the dialogue with subtlety, allowing each man to express his grievances while carefully guiding them toward mutual understanding. By the evening's end, the merchants had reached a compromise that appeared entirely self-directed, yet the resolution was orchestrated entirely by Selina's insight and planning. Word of her involvement, though unspoken, spread quietly through the town, adding to her mystique. Despite her growing influence, Selina remained acutely aware of the dangers surrounding her. Rival planters, curious observers, and envious socialites were constant threats. Margaret Ellsworth, in particular, had not given up on her quest to uncover the secret behind Selina's power. She continued to organize social tests, hoping to provoke mistakes or reveal hidden abilities. Yet Selina's mastery of perception and psychological strategy allowed her to anticipate these moves, deflecting scrutiny without arousing suspicion. Each challenge, carefully navigated, reinforced her reputation rather than undermining it. Within the Whitmore household, Selina strengthened her network of allies. She identified key individuals whose loyalty could be secured through small favors, strategic information, or subtle demonstrations of protection. These alliances created a web of influence that extended her reach throughout the estate, allowing her to observe, guide, and manage events without overt interference. Even disputes among the staff were often preemptively resolved, as Selina subtly manipulated conversations, anticipated conflicts, and offered resolutions that appeared organic. Her ability to shape outcomes invisibly became a hallmark of her presence, further solidifying her legendary status. Selina's secret, the true source of her extraordinary power, remained hidden even from those closest to her. She had mastered the art of controlled revelation, offering glimpses of her abilities in ways that inspired awe without disclosing the full extent of her knowledge. Her interventions in household and social affairs were carefully calibrated to maintain the illusion of luck, intuition, or simple intelligence, while the reality, a combination of observation, analysis, and strategic manipulation, remained invisible. This secrecy was vital, for any exposure could provoke fear, resentment, or even dangerous attempts to control or eliminate her. One evening, a letter arrived at the Whitmore estate bearing an unusual seal. It was from a wealthy planter in Natchez, Mississippi, who had heard of Selina's abilities and sought to witness them firsthand. The correspondence was polite yet insistent, hinting at interest that bordered on obsession. Selina, upon reading the letter, immediately recognized both opportunity and risk. She advised Whitmore to respond diplomatically, accepting a visit but carefully controlling the circumstances. The resulting encounter became a showcase of her abilities. She anticipated questions, guided conversations, and subtly influenced the planter's perception, leaving him both impressed and mystified. By the time he departed, he believed he had merely experienced the effect of natural charm and intelligence, never suspecting the depth of strategy at play. While navigating these external challenges, Selina also began to leverage her growing influence for subtle economic and social advantages. She advised on planting schedules, household management, and the training of new staff, ensuring that the Whitmore estate operated with remarkable efficiency. The results were undeniable. Crops flourished, disputes among laborers were minimized, and the estate's reputation for productivity and order grew. Whitmore, though proud of the apparent improvements, remained oblivious to the orchestrator behind them. Selina's genius lay not only in her ability to guide outcomes, but in her skillful concealment, allowing her to exert influence while avoiding the dangers of exposure. Amid these triumphs, the shadow of potential threats loomed larger. Margaret Ellsworth continued her subtle investigations, while rival planters probed for signs of manipulation or hidden knowledge. Selina, aware of these dangers, doubled her efforts to safeguard her secret. She maintained meticulous records in her mind, noting allegiances, character traits, and vulnerabilities. Every conversation, gesture, and reaction was catalogued, analyzed, and used to anticipate future developments. Her strategic thinking transformed everyday interactions into a chessboard of influence, where each move advanced her position while minimizing risk. Selina's careful planning also tended to her personal safety. She recognized that her extraordinary abilities and the value placed upon her could provoke violence or coercion. Measures were taken to ensure that her movements, communications, and alliances remained secure. Trusted allies were positioned strategically, and she learned to anticipate not only the intentions of those who sought to exploit her, but also the unpredictable consequences of human behavior in a society built on power, fear, and hierarchy. Despite the constant challenges, Selina maintained a composed exterior. Her beauty, intelligence, and calm demeanor became tools as well as shields. She understood that perception often mattered as much as reality. By cultivating an image of elegance, intelligence, and subtle authority, she commanded respect and mitigated threats. Her reputation grew not merely through deeds, but through the careful cultivation of legend, a blend of observation, strategy, and psychological mastery that left those around her questioning what was real and what was orchestrated. One of the most delicate maneuvers involved the local clergy, whose influence over the town's social and moral judgments could not be ignored. Selina recognized the potential for interference from religious leaders, who might view her extraordinary abilities with suspicion or moral concern. She engaged them with deference and insight, subtly demonstrating wisdom, piety, and humility, while guiding conversations toward constructive outcomes. The clergy, impressed by her apparent virtue and intelligence, became unwitting allies, further extending her influence without ever understanding the mechanisms at work. Selina's careful orchestration of influence, culminated in a series of events that solidified her legend. The Whitmore estate, under her guidance, hosted gatherings that combined social, economic, and political significance. She managed interactions with precision, steering outcomes in ways that appeared accidental or natural, while ensuring that her strategic objectives were met. By the end of the second year, her influence had become pervasive. She shaped opinions, guided decisions, and subtly controlled the narrative of her environment, all while maintaining the appearance of compliance and subservience. Through it all, the impossible secret at the core of Selina Hawthorne's existence remained protected. It was a secret that had elevated her from a commodity to a legend, allowing her to navigate a dangerous world with intelligence, strategy, and discretion. While others speculated, envied, or feared her, she moved through the social, economic, and political spheres of Mobile with a quiet mastery, leaving only the faintest traces of her true power. Part 4 closes with Selina at the pinnacle of her strategic influence. She had transformed the Whitmore estate into a hub of efficiency, diplomacy, and subtle social dominance. Rivalries had been deflected, allies cultivated, and her secret preserved. The web of influence she had woven extended beyond her immediate surroundings, reaching into the hearts and minds of those who thought they controlled her, yet found themselves guided by her unseen hand. And yet, despite the apparent security of her position, Selina understood that the world remained fraught with danger. Ambition, envy, and curiosity were forces that could collide unexpectedly, threatening to expose her secret or challenge her authority. She remained vigilant, anticipating moves, planning contingencies, and preparing for the inevitable tests that awaited her. Selina Hawthorne was no longer merely the most expensive slave ever auctioned in Alabama. She was a strategist, a master of perception, and the guardian of a secret so profound that it could alter destinies, reshape power, and defy understanding. Her story, though already legendary, was only entering its most critical phase, a phase in which the stakes would rise, the challenges would intensify, and the impossible secret she guarded would demand every ounce of her intellect, cunning, and patience. And as the night fell over the Whitmore estate, Selina Hawthorne remained poised, alert, and inexorably in control of a world that sought to confine her, unaware that the woman they thought they owned was, in reality, the architect of her own destiny. The summer of Selina Hawthorne's third year at the Whitmore estate arrived with a heavy, sweltering heat that seemed to echo the mounting tension surrounding her presence. By now, her reputation had transcended the boundaries of Mobile, reaching plantations across Alabama and even whispers in neighboring states. Rumors of her uncanny abilities and strategic intelligence had evolved into near-mythical tales. Some said she could anticipate disasters before they occurred. Others claimed she could bend the wills of men with subtle gestures or a well-placed word. To the outside world, she was the most valuable and mysterious woman anyone had ever known. But with admiration came scrutiny, envy, and danger. It was during this period that Selina first confronted a threat that tested not only her intelligence, but the very core of her secret. Samuel Carver, the wealthy and ambitious planter from northern Alabama, returned to Mobile, this time with a more insistent purpose. He had learned through intermediaries of Selina's influence in the Whitmore household and was determined to uncover the source of her extraordinary power. Carver's approach was calculated and patient, designed to provoke slips, contradictions, or inadvertent revelations. Selina, perceptive as ever, anticipated his arrival weeks in advance, preparing contingencies, observing his prior behavior, and identifying vulnerabilities she could exploit. Carver arrived at the Whitmore estate under the guise of a social visit. Whitmore, proud to display the woman whose acquisition had made him famous, welcomed him warmly, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. Selina greeted Carver with composed courtesy, her voice calm, her expressions measured. Every movement, every word, was a calculated part of a strategy designed to protect her secret while subtly guiding the interaction. She allowed Carver to feel in control, a psychological maneuver that masked her true influence. From the moment of his arrival, Selina's perception was heightened. She noted the micro-expressions in Carver's eyes, the faint tension in his shoulders, the way he leaned forward when he believed he had uncovered something. Each observation allowed her to predict his line of questioning, the arguments he would present, and the potential provocations he might attempt. When he probed her knowledge or skills, she responded in ways that appeared transparent yet revealed nothing, a compliment here, a deflection there, and she maintained the impression of openness while preserving the impenetrability of her secret. Carver's attempts escalated over several days. He organized excursions, asking Selina to assist in tasks under the pretense of cooperation, while probing for inconsistencies or advantages he could exploit. Selina, however, was always 3 steps ahead. She subtly redirected situations, guiding outcomes so that he believed he had uncovered insights when, in reality, he had merely followed the path she laid before him. By the end of his visit, Carver left impressed, convinced of her brilliance, yet utterly unaware of the strategic mastery that had controlled every interaction. While managing Carver's scrutiny, Selina also faced challenges within the household. Some staff members, increasingly aware of her influence, began to test her subtly. A young housemaid, envious of the attention Selina received, attempted to spread rumors questioning her character. Another, frustrated by her perceived favoritism, tried to manipulate Whitmore's decisions in subtle ways. Selina, observing these behaviors, acted decisively yet discreetly. She neutralized threats through persuasion, strategic guidance, and carefully timed interventions that left her rivals disarmed while maintaining her authority. Her ability to manipulate perception and outcomes extended beyond the immediate household. Selina had begun to cultivate alliances with key figures in Mobile, including merchants, artisans, and even minor political leaders. She recognized that influence was most effective when it operated through a network rather than relying solely on her direct interventions. By fostering loyalty and admiration among these individuals, she created a protective web around herself, a network capable of both defending her secret and amplifying her reputation. Amid these external pressures, Selina also began to explore the strategic use of information as a form of power. She collected knowledge discreetly, details about local business dealings, social rivalries, and political movements. By understanding the desires, fears, and ambitions of those around her, she could subtly guide events in ways that advanced her position or neutralized potential threats. This strategy was not overt manipulation, but a form of invisible influence, shaping the environment without leaving evidence of her intervention. One evening, a seemingly trivial incident tested Selina's ability to maintain control under pressure. A shipment of goods destined for the Whitmore estate was delayed, threatening to disrupt household operations and embarrass Whitmore socially. Carver, visiting nearby at the time, expressed interest in the situation, hoping to witness a mistake. Selina, however, anticipated the disruption. She had coordinated with merchants, transporters, and staff to ensure that contingencies were in place. By the time the shipment arrived, perfectly on schedule, the entire situation appeared seamless. Carver, again impressed, marveled at her apparent efficiency, unaware that the outcome had been orchestrated entirely under Selina's guidance. Throughout these challenges, Selina's secret remained intact. It was not merely intelligence or charm that gave her advantage. It was a profound understanding of human nature, combined with the ability to predict behavior and manipulate perception with subtlety. She had transformed her knowledge into a protective shield, allowing her to navigate a world that sought to dominate her while maintaining control over her own destiny. Yet even as her mastery grew, Selina recognized that the stakes were higher than ever. The rumors of her abilities had reached individuals with both wealth and ambition sufficient to threaten her. Some sought to purchase her, others to expose her, and a few, like Carver, hoped to extract her secret for their own gain. Each encounter required careful calculation, balancing openness and discretion, influence and concealment. The line between safety and danger was razor thin, and any misstep could have catastrophic consequences. Selina's strategic thinking also extended to her interactions with Whitmore. While he admired her abilities, he remained unaware of the full extent of her influence. She guided his decisions subtly, shaping his judgments while ensuring that he retained the illusion of control. This approach maintained household harmony, protected her secret, and reinforced her status as indispensable, all without arousing suspicion. Her mastery of perception and timing was critical. Any overt display of control could provoke resentment or fear, undermining the delicate balance she had cultivated. Amid these tensions, Selina began to explore the broader implications of her influence. She recognized that her abilities, if leveraged correctly, could extend beyond the household and social circles, potentially affecting political and economic developments in Mobile. She began to map the networks of power surrounding the Whitmore estate, identifying key figures whose actions could be guided or influenced. By positioning herself within these networks, she could exert influence over events beyond her immediate environment, all while preserving the secrecy that safeguarded her life and her extraordinary advantage. This period also marked a deepening of Selina's internal resolve. She understood that survival in a society built on oppression and control required not only skill but patience, foresight, and resilience. Her secret, the core of her power, was both a shield and a weapon. She could navigate challenges, neutralize threats, and guide outcomes without reliance on brute force or overt authority. Yet she also recognized the moral and psychological complexities of her position. Manipulating others, even subtly, carried risks. Exposure, miscalculation, or betrayal could have devastating consequences. Selina's brilliance lay in her ability to weigh these risks, anticipate outcomes, and act decisively while maintaining the illusion of innocence and compliance. By the end of the third year, Selina had faced multiple tests of her secret, each one a measure of her ability to navigate a dangerous world with subtlety and precision. Samuel Carver's probing, the envy of rival households, the challenges posed by her own staff, all had been met with strategic mastery. Her legend had grown, her influence had expanded, and her secret remained impenetrable. Selina had transformed from a purchased commodity into a figure whose power extended far beyond her physical circumstances, a strategist whose mind shaped events, perceptions, and outcomes with remarkable precision. Part 5 closes with Selina standing at the threshold of greater challenges. The tests she had faced had reinforced her control, sharpened her strategies, and deepened her understanding of the delicate interplay between perception, influence, and secrecy. Yet she knew that the world remained unpredictable, and that new threats, more cunning, more determined, and more dangerous, would inevitably arise. Her secret, the impossible knowledge and skill that had elevated her above all others, remained her most valuable asset and her most critical responsibility. Selina Hawthorne was no longer merely the most expensive slave ever auctioned in Alabama. She had become a master of influence, a guardian of secrets, and a strategist whose brilliance could shape destinies. And as she surveyed the Whitmore estate from her chamber window, watching the sun set over Mobile's distant waters, she understood that the true measure of her power lay not in wealth or ownership, but in her ability to navigate the shadows, manipulate perception, and protect the extraordinary secret that defined her existence. The arrival of autumn brought a subtle shift to the atmosphere at the Whitmore estate. The oppressive heat of summer receded, replaced by a cool breeze that stirred the long oaks lining the estate's perimeter. Yet despite the changing season, the tension surrounding Selina Hawthorne's presence remained constant. Her reputation had reached a level where curiosity, envy, and ambition intersected dangerously. While she had successfully navigated the tests of rivals and outsiders, the world outside her carefully controlled domain grew increasingly unpredictable. Allies could betray, enemies could conspire, and each new visitor brought potential peril masked by civility. Selina recognized that the time had come to expand her network of influence beyond the Whitmore household. Subtle alliances had long been part of her strategy, but now she needed connections capable of defending her secret and enhancing her reach. She began identifying individuals whose loyalty could be secured not by force, but by guidance, flattery, and discreet manipulation. These allies included merchants who could provide intelligence about local affairs, minor political figures whose influence could sway decisions, and even servants from neighboring estates who could serve as informants or intermediaries. By weaving this web, Selina ensured that any threat would be met not only by her own cunning, but by a network of carefully positioned allies. Among the first key figures Selina approached was a merchant named Thomas Reed, a man known for his discretion and ambition. Reed had observed the Whitmore estate from afar, intrigued by the improvements in productivity and social standing that coincided with Selina's presence. She invited him for a private consultation under the pretense of discussing household needs and trade logistics. During their conversation, Selina demonstrated insight into Reed's personal ambitions and subtly guided him toward loyalty and collaboration. By framing suggestions as mutually beneficial opportunities, she ensured that he would act in her interests without overt coercion. Reed, impressed by her intelligence and charisma, became one of her most reliable allies. At the same time, Selina faced growing envy and scrutiny from the social elite of Mobile. Margaret Ellsworth, still obsessed with uncovering the secret behind Selina's influence, intensified her efforts. She sent emissaries to observe Selina's interactions, hoping to identify inconsistencies or moments of vulnerability. Selina, ever perceptive, anticipated these moves and orchestrated situations so that observers would leave both impressed and mystified. She allowed small glimpses of her capabilities to reinforce the legend without revealing the underlying strategies. Margaret's frustration grew with each attempt, while Selina's control over perception became ever more formidable. Selina also strengthened her position within the Whitmore household. While her influence over Whitmore had long been subtle, she now began to assert more control over internal operations, ensuring that staff loyalty was unwavering and that potential disruptions were mitigated before they could escalate. A young housemaid, previously envious of Selina, attempted to undermine her through petty gossip. Selina, recognizing the challenge, employed a combination of psychological insight and strategic intervention. She guided the girl toward tasks that highlighted her strengths, while simultaneously neutralizing the potential for mischief. By the end of the week, the housemaid not only respected Selina, but actively worked in her interest, a subtle victory in the ongoing management of human behavior. External threats, however, were growing more complex. Samuel Carver, despite previous failures to uncover Selina's secret, had returned to Mobile with renewed determination. He began observing the estate from a distance, noting patterns of movement, interactions, and outcomes. Carver believed that persistence and careful attention might eventually expose the source of Selina's power. Selina, aware of his presence, integrated his movements into her strategic calculations. She allowed him to observe situations that seemed revealing but were in fact carefully staged, ensuring that any conclusions he drew would be incomplete or misleading. In this way, she transformed a potential threat into a tool for furthering her reputation while preserving her secret. During this period, Selina also began to explore opportunities for broader social influence. She recognized that her abilities could be leveraged not only to manage immediate threats, but to shape the perceptions of influential figures in Mobile. She cultivated relationships with prominent families, offering guidance in subtle ways that appeared natural and unassuming. By influencing conversations, decisions, and social arrangements, she extended her control over a sphere far larger than the physical boundaries of the Whitmore estate. Each interaction became an opportunity to reinforce loyalty, admiration, and dependence, all while preserving the secrecy that protected her extraordinary abilities. One of the most delicate maneuvers involved the local political scene. A contested election for a minor but influential office in Mobile presented both risk and opportunity. Selina, understanding the stakes, discreetly guided conversations among key figures, planting ideas that aligned outcomes with her interests. She encouraged alliances between candidates who appeared to be rivals, subtly mitigating potential conflicts while enhancing her reputation as a wise and capable advisor. By the time the election concluded, the results seemed entirely natural to observers, Yet Selena had played a pivotal role in shaping the outcome. Her influence now extended into political as well as social and economic spheres, a testament to her strategic acumen. Amid these triumphs, danger was never far from Selena's consciousness. One evening, while reviewing the household's accounts and schedules, she noticed irregularities suggesting that someone had attempted to manipulate resources for personal gain. Investigating discreetly, she uncovered a minor conspiracy among servants who had colluded with a visiting planter's emissary to gather information about her and the Whitmore estate. Selena acted decisively, neutralizing the threat through strategic redirection and subtle persuasion. By exposing the conspirators without public accusation, she maintained order, protected her secret, and reinforced her authority. Selena's mastery of human behavior extended beyond reactive measures. She proactively shaped perceptions to reinforce her legend. Stories of her insight, foresight, and influence were allowed to circulate, carefully curated to inspire awe and deter challenges. She understood that reputation could be as powerful a weapon as intelligence or skill, and she cultivated hers with precision. By blending reality with carefully constructed myth, she created an aura of invincibility that protected her from those who might otherwise attempt to exploit or harm her. All the while, her ultimate secret, the source of her extraordinary abilities, remained impenetrable. It was a combination of acute observation, psychological insight, and strategic foresight that allowed her to anticipate human behavior, manipulate outcomes, and guide events with subtlety. While others speculated about her origins, abilities, or potential connections to wealth and power, the truth was known only to Selena. This secret was both a shield and a weapon, granting her unparalleled leverage in a society designed to suppress her. The autumn months also brought opportunities for Selena to extend her influence through calculated social gatherings. She hosted discreet dinners and salons at the Whitmore estate, carefully curating attendees to include influential figures, potential allies, and even rivals whose perceptions she wished to shape. Each conversation was guided subtly, outcomes anticipated and directed with precision. Guests left impressed by her charm and insight, unaware that they had been carefully maneuvered to advance her strategic objectives. These gatherings reinforced her position as a central figure in Mobile's social network, while preserving the secrecy that protected her power. Yet Selena remained vigilant. Every success, every expansion of influence, carried the potential for unforeseen consequences. She maintained meticulous records in her mind, noting the ambitions, fears, and tendencies of those around her. Every gesture, word, and decision was analyzed for potential risks and opportunities. In this way, she transformed the unpredictability of human behavior into a manageable landscape, where foresight and subtle intervention allowed her to maintain control. By the end of the third year, Selena had achieved a level of strategic mastery that few could comprehend. Her influence spanned household, social, economic, and political spheres, yet she remained invisible in her true power. Allies were loyal, rivals cautious, and potential threats neutralized or redirected. Her secret, the impossible knowledge that had elevated her from property to legend, remained protected at the core of her being. Part 6 closes with Selena at the apex of her strategic network. She had cultivated alliances capable of defending her secret and extending her influence. She had navigated internal challenges and external threats with precision, and she had transformed perception into a weapon as effective as any physical force. The Whitmore estate had become not only a hub of prosperity, but a stage upon which Selena orchestrated outcomes with skillful subtlety. Yet the world remained fraught with uncertainty. Ambition, envy, and curiosity ensured that new threats would arise, more complex and dangerous than before. Selena understood that the true measure of her mastery lay not only in maintaining her current position, but in anticipating and preparing for the challenges yet to come. She was no longer merely the most expensive slave ever auctioned in Alabama. She was a strategist, a master manipulator, and the keeper of a secret so extraordinary that it shaped destinies, controlled perception, and defied comprehension. As the leaves fell and the nights grew longer, Selina Hawthorne continued to navigate her world with grace, intelligence, and vigilance. Each action, each word, each gesture was calculated to protect her secret and extend her influence. And though the dangers surrounding her were constant, she faced them with the quiet certainty of one who had mastered both perception and reality, poised to confront the trials that would define the next phase of her extraordinary life. Winter approached Mobile with a subtle chill that carried more than just cold air. It brought the heightened tension of challenges Selina Hawthorne had long anticipated. While the Whitmore estate appeared serene to the casual observer, beneath its stately surface, currents of envy, ambition, and intrigue swirled like an undercurrent, ready to pull the unwary under. Selina had spent years cultivating influence, alliances, and the aura of an almost mythical presence, but even the most meticulously crafted plans could be tested by unforeseen threats. Among the new threats were ambitious planters from neighboring counties who had heard tales of Selina's extraordinary abilities. Rumors described her as more than intelligent, more than persuasive. Some whispered that she had almost supernatural foresight, a talent that allowed her to manipulate events and anticipate human behavior with uncanny accuracy. While many dismissed these tales as exaggeration, a few wealthy and cunning men believed them, and they were motivated by greed, curiosity, or the promise of advantage. Selina understood that these individuals would not approach openly. Their methods would be subtle, designed to test her, provoke missteps, or uncover her secret. One such figure was Benjamin Thornwell, a wealthy planter whose ambitions rivaled only his pride. Thornwell arrived in Mobile ostensibly to conduct business, yet his true aim was clear: to observe Selina, evaluate her influence, and discover any weaknesses he could exploit. He made no overt threats, no rash movements. Instead, he engaged in subtle probing, questioning staff, offering opportunities for collaboration, and testing her responses during social gatherings. Selina, ever perceptive, immediately identified his intent. She allowed him glimpses of her intelligence and foresight, enough to intrigue, but always carefully controlled to prevent exposure of her true abilities. Thornwell left each encounter impressed, unaware that every observation he thought he made had been orchestrated by Selina herself. Within the Whitmore household, challenges continued to emerge. Servants who had once been neutral or loyal began to question the hierarchy, emboldened by rumors of Selina's influence. A young but ambitious housekeeper sought to undermine her, spreading whispers of favoritism and secrecy, while another, jealous of her attention from Whitmore, attempted to manipulate household schedules to create chaos. Selina addressed these internal threats with precision, using a combination of psychology, subtle intimidation, and strategic rewards to neutralize dissent. By turning potential adversaries into compliant participants, she maintained control while reinforcing her reputation for intelligence, fairness, and authority. Amid these internal and external pressures, Selina also faced the challenge of maintaining the delicate balance of her social influence. The local elite, including Margaret Ellsworth, continued to probe her abilities through observation, social tests, and subtle insinuations. Selina met each test with calculated grace, shaping interactions so that outcomes appeared natural while her true influence remained invisible. She understood that perception was a powerful weapon. By maintaining an air of mystery and controlled revelation, she ensured that admiration, curiosity, and caution coexisted among those around her. The winter also brought political tensions that Selina leveraged to expand her influence. A contentious debate arose in Mobile regarding land development and trade regulations, a dispute that could determine the wealth and power of several prominent families. Selina recognized the opportunity to subtly guide outcomes while preserving her secrecy. She advised Whitmore on strategic social engagements, suggested alliances between influential figures, and manipulated information flows, all in ways that appeared natural to observers. By the time the debate concluded, decisions had favored Whitmore and his allies, yet no one suspected the invisible hand that had shaped events. Selina Hawthorne, amid these high-stakes maneuvers, Selina also began cultivating discreet relationships with key outsiders whose abilities could complement her own. She identified merchants, minor officials, and skilled laborers whose loyalty could be secured through guidance, favors, and subtle influence. These alliances extended her reach beyond the estate, allowing her to anticipate economic and social trends, detect threats, and gather intelligence that would otherwise remain inaccessible. By weaving this web of alliances, Selina transformed potential vulnerabilities into strategic advantages, ensuring that both opportunity and danger were managed with precision. Despite her growing mastery, Selina remained vigilant against psychological and emotional challenges. She understood that envy, ambition, and fear could be as dangerous as direct confrontation. One evening, she intercepted a plan by rival planters to discredit her through carefully staged social incidents. Rather than confront them openly, Selina orchestrated events so that the incidents reinforced her reputation instead of undermining it. By anticipating their moves, controlling outcomes, and manipulating perceptions, she turned threats into tools that enhanced her influence. Her genius lay in transforming the unpredictable and potentially dangerous into predictable advantages. The rising storm also tested Selina's personal resilience. The mental and emotional demands of constant vigilance, strategic orchestration, and social manipulation weighed heavily. She had to maintain composure while navigating hostility, envy, and suspicion, all while protecting the impossible secret at the core of her power. In these moments of solitude, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from a commodity sold at auction to a strategist whose intelligence and foresight shaped the fates of those around her. These reflections strengthened her resolve, reinforcing the necessity of patience, discretion, and unerring calculation. During this period, Selina also became aware of an emerging alliance of outsiders who sought to challenge her influence collectively. Thornwell had connected with other ambitious planters, pooling their observations, strategies, and resources in an attempt to expose her abilities. Their approach was methodical and coordinated, testing her patience, judgment, and adaptability. Selina, anticipating the alliance, transformed their combined efforts into opportunities for observation and influence. By allowing certain controlled exposures, she created scenarios where each outsider acted in ways that reinforced her legend, misled their conclusions, and left her secret intact. One critical encounter involved a dinner hosted by a neighboring planter, ostensibly a celebration of the season. Selina attended under careful calculation, aware that several individuals with vested interest in her abilities would be present. Throughout the evening, she guided conversations with subtlety, redirected potential threats, and influenced the interactions of attendees so that alliances shifted in her favor. By the end of the event, those present left impressed, intrigued, and bewildered, while Selina had secured strategic advantages that extended her influence far beyond the immediate gathering. It was a masterful display of psychological orchestration, one that reinforced her position without revealing the depth of her skill. As the winter deepened, Selina also began preparing for potential crises that might arise from political, social, or personal challenges. She anticipated possible confrontations with Carver, Thornwell, and other ambitious outsiders, devising contingency plans, cultivating loyal intermediaries, and creating layers of strategic protection. Her ability to foresee potential scenarios and plan outcomes with precision allowed her to navigate an increasingly complex environment where human behavior, perception, and ambition intersected in unpredictable ways. Part 7 reaches its climax with Selina standing firmly at the center of a storm of envy, ambition, and intrigue. Her network of alliances, her strategic mastery, and her careful control of perception have allowed her to neutralize threats, expand influence, and protect her impossible secret. Yet the rising storm of coordinated external threats, internal rivalries, and unpredictable human ambition reminds her that vigilance is never optional. Selina Hawthorne was no longer merely the most expensive slave ever auctioned in Alabama. She was the architect of a vast, invisible network of influence. She navigated social, political, and economic landscapes with the precision of a master strategist, manipulating perception, guiding behavior, and securing loyalty without revealing her true capabilities. Her secret, the combination of acute observation, psychological insight, and strategic foresight, remained impenetrable, a shield that allowed her to confront challenges the world could scarcely comprehend. As the winds of winter rustled through the towering oaks of the Whitmore estate, Selina gazed from her chamber window, contemplating the trials yet to come. The rising storm of threats, some visible, some hidden, was both a challenge and an opportunity. Each day would test her intellect, patience, and resilience, demanding careful orchestration of human behavior, strategic calculation, and unerring discretion. Yet Selina faced the future with quiet confidence. She had survived scrutiny, manipulated perception, and turned envy into advantage. She had proven herself a master of influence, a keeper of secrets, and a strategist capable of shaping the destinies of those around her. Part 7 closes with Selina poised on the edge of new challenges, ready to confront enemies who sought to expose or control her. The storm may rise, the intrigue may intensify, but Selina Hawthorne remains a force beyond ordinary comprehension, a woman whose brilliance, strategy, and impossible secret define her, shield her, and elevate her far above those who would seek to dominate her. The spring of Selina Hawthorne's 4th year at the Whitmore estate brought with it both promise and peril. The rumors of her extraordinary abilities had spread even further, reaching planters, merchants, and political figures in Mobile and beyond. Whispers suggested that her insight was more than intelligence or experience. It bordered on the impossible. Some claimed she could predict crises before they arose, others swore he could bend human behavior with mere gestures. To those who had yet to meet her, she was mythic. To those who had, she was the living embodiment of skill, charm, and strategy. Yet despite the awe surrounding her, the dangers she faced had never been greater. Selina had navigated countless challenges, from envious rivals to curious outsiders, but the coming months presented a convergence of threats unlike any before. Samuel Carver, Benjamin Thornwell, and Margaret Ellsworth, each ambitious in their own way, had formed an unspoken coalition, a network of observation and intrigue aimed at revealing the source of her power. Each attempted to provoke slips, contradictions, or any sign that would expose the impossible secret she had carefully guarded. Selina understood the gravity of this moment. One misstep could unravel years of careful strategy and even threaten her life. From the very first encounter that spring, Selina began orchestrating the convergence of these threats into opportunities. She arranged social gatherings under seemingly ordinary circumstances, inviting Carver, Thornwell, and Ellsworth to the same events. Every interaction, every gesture, every word was calculated. She allowed them glimpses of her intelligence, demonstrations of foresight that inspired awe, yet nothing so revealing as to endanger her secret. Their attempts to provoke her only provided more material for her to analyze. Their ambitions, weaknesses, and interpersonal dynamics became tools she could manipulate to her advantage. Within the Whitmore estate, Selina also addressed internal threats. A group of servants, emboldened by the attention her reputation commanded, had begun to conspire, hoping to uncover knowledge that could enhance their position or leverage her favor. Selina, aware of their motives, orchestrated events to expose their intentions discreetly while simultaneously offering guidance that redirected their ambitions in ways beneficial to her. By the end of the week, the conspirators were transformed into loyal allies, their energy and initiative now serving to strengthen her influence rather than threaten it. Selina's mastery of perception reached its pinnacle during these months. At a lavish dinner hosted at the Whitmore estate, she subtly guided interactions among Carver, Thornwell, and Ellsworth, planting seeds of misperception that ensured their alliance against her would falter. She directed conversations, emphasized minor disagreements, and highlighted differences of opinion in a way that appeared incidental. By the evening's end, the three rivals left convinced that Selina was both brilliant and untouchable, yet entirely unaware that she had engineered the outcomes they observed. The impossible secret, the combination of acute observation, psychological insight, and strategic foresight, remained perfectly concealed. Amid these high-stakes maneuvers, Selina also took the opportunity to expand her influence socially and economically. She guided Whitmore in negotiations with merchants, advised on plantation logistics, and subtly steered local political decisions. Her involvement, though invisible to most, resulted in measurable improvements. Crops were more productive, trade relationships strengthened, and social alliances shifted in her favor. The Whitmore estate became a hub of both tangible success and legendary perception, with Selina at the center, the quiet orchestrator of every triumph. The climax of this period occurred when Selina orchestrated a decisive confrontation with her most persistent rival, Margaret Ellsworth. Ellsworth had long sought to expose Selina, convinced that the young woman's influence was rooted in deception or hidden advantage. Selina arranged a private meeting under the guise of friendly reconciliation. Using her mastery of psychological insight, she anticipated every objection, fear, and motive Ellsworth would bring to the conversation. By carefully guiding the dialogue, she revealed just enough intelligence and foresight to inspire awe, while simultaneously exposing the futility of Ellsworth's attempts to uncover her secret. The encounter ended with Ellsworth's grudging respect and silent acknowledgement of Selina's superior strategic ability. At the same time, Selina addressed the looming presence of Carver and Thornwell. She invited both to separate consultations under the pretense of negotiation and collaboration. During these encounters, she provided information selectively, guided their decisions subtly, and allowed each to feel they were advancing their own interests. By manipulating perception, she ensured that both men were both impressed and misled, reinforcing her invincibility while safeguarding the impossible secret. Through these maneuvers, Selina demonstrated the true extent of her genius, the ability to control perception, orchestrate outcomes, and neutralize threats without resorting to overt displays of power. She had transformed the Whitmore estate into both a sanctuary and a stage, where every event, interaction, and decision could be guided to her advantage. Her rivals were none the wiser, believing they acted independently while she subtly shaped their every move. Despite her control, Selina remained vigilant. She understood that unpredictability was an inherent aspect of human behavior. Ambition, envy, and desire could produce outcomes beyond calculation. To mitigate this, she relied on observation, foresight, and contingency planning. Every ally, every adversary, every social interaction was catalogued mentally, analyzed, and used to predict potential outcomes. This discipline, combined with her ability to manipulate perception, allowed her to operate at a level of strategic mastery unparalleled in mobile society. Selina's legend continued to grow. Stories of her insight and influence spread throughout the city, reaching the ears of those who had never seen her in person. Some described her as prophetic, others as possessing almost supernatural wisdom. Yet no one, outside of Selina herself, understood the true source of her power. The impossible secret remained intact, a carefully guarded truth that allowed her to navigate a world intent on domination, exploitation, and control. The culmination of Selina's strategic brilliance occurred when an unforeseen crisis threatened the Whitmore estate. A severe storm struck Mobile, disrupting trade, damaging crops, and threatening social gatherings. Rivals and observers assumed that such chaos would expose weaknesses in her management or influence. Yet Selina had anticipated such disruptions. She had prepared contingency plans, coordinated with allies, and positioned key individuals to respond effectively. The storm passed with minimal impact, and the Whitmore estate emerged stronger, its operations unharmed, its reputation enhanced. Observers marveled at the estate's resilience, attributing it to luck or natural skill, while Selina's impossible secret remained concealed at the heart of her strategy. By the time spring fully settled, Selina had not only defended her secret, but had expanded her influence, neutralized rivals, and reinforced her legend. Samuel Carver, Benjamin Thornwell, and Margaret Ellsworth had all been manipulated in ways that preserved their respect, while ensuring they could not compromise her position. The Whitmore estate flourished under her guidance, its productivity, social standing, and political influence reaching unprecedented levels. Part 8 closes with Selina Hawthorne, poised as a figure whose influence extends beyond comprehension. She is no longer merely the most expensive slave ever auctioned in Alabama. She is a strategist, a master manipulator of perception, and the keeper of a secret so profound that it shields her from envy, ambition, and even danger itself. The impossible secret, the combination of foresight, psychological insight, and strategic orchestration, remains intact, a defining element of her legend. As the sun set over Mobile, casting long shadows across the estate's oaks and gardens, Selina stood at her window, reflecting on her journey. She had transformed adversity into opportunity, challenge into mastery, and secrecy into power. The world had tried to define her, control her, and exploit her, yet she had emerged as an architect of influence whose brilliance shaped events, perceptions, and outcomes with unmatched precision. Selina Hawthorne's story, now complete, is one of survival, intelligence, and strategic genius. From the moment she was auctioned as property to the height of her influence, she demonstrated that true power is not defined solely by ownership, status, or wealth, but by the ability to understand, anticipate, and guide the world around you. Her impossible secret, forever hidden from those who sought to expose it, ensured that she remained untouchable, her legacy enduring as a testament to the extraordinary capabilities of a woman who refused to be confined by circumstance. And so, Selina Hawthorne stands in history, not only as the most expensive slave ever auctioned in Alabama, but as a figure of legend, strategy, and secrecy. Her influence, her cunning, and her mastery of human behavior serve as a reminder that brilliance and power often lie in subtlety, discretion, and the careful orchestration of perception. Her story, though rooted in the harsh realities of antebellum society, transcends the limitations of her time, becoming a timeless testament to intelligence, resilience, and the indomitable human spirit.